Good morning. I'm Adele Lyons with the Mississippi Gulf Coast Chamber of Commerce. I serve as the CEO, and the mission of the Chamber of Commerce here on the Gulf Coast is connect, inform, advocate, and develop. And certainly we're trying to stick to our mission in these tough times. And today we've got some really good information to share with you. We have two speakers on the line with us today. Jackie Turner, who serves as the Executive Director of the Mississippi Department of Employment Security. And with her there in her office is Timothy Rush, who serves as Director of Reemployment Assistance. And of course, y'all are just overwhelmed. You've got so much input and outtake going on right now, and we appreciate your time. And hopefully we can get some information out to some of our 985 members and their staff about how to handle this situation and crisis right now. So why don't we just start off? Who is eligible for unemployment? We're hearing a lot of different things: full-time, part-time, self-employed, independent contractors. You know, in the past, it always seemed to be you had to be terminated from your position to be able to apply. Can you just tell me just who in general should be applying?
For regular unemployment, on a normal basis, people are eligible for unemployment if they have lost their job through no fault of their own and are able and available to work. But of course, in this COVID-19 crisis, it changes a little bit. So there are different programs that the Congress has passed along with our regular unemployment insurance that may allow people that aren't normally eligible for unemployment to be able to draw. So we have the people who normally qualify for unemployment insurance. That would mean those who are working for employers that pay into the unemployment insurance tax system. And then through the CARES Act, we have at least two other programs that Timothy can talk about.
Yeah, in addition to those individuals who qualify for regular benefits, the CARES Act provides benefits for individuals who may be self-employed, who may receive a 1099, or individuals who would not normally qualify on regular benefits because they haven't worked long enough in a particular time period or earned enough money. So the CARES Act identifies one program referred to as the Pandemic Unemployment Assistance Program. That program would potentially allow those individuals who are self-employed, those individuals who have earned 1099, or who may be working part-time and do not qualify or haven't earned enough money to qualify for a regular claim. So at this point in time, it appears to be, based upon our guidance from the Department of Labor, any individual who has been employed during the calendar year of 2019, who may have been self-employed, who may have been working part-time, or maybe even working for a nonprofit organization, such as a charitable organization or faith-based organization, where they have issued those individuals 1099s, they possibly could be eligible for unemployment benefits under this program.
We hear some different terms, and can you maybe explain the difference to being laid off, being fired, being furloughed, having your hours cut, maybe being let go? What do those terms generally mean, and how do they fit in today's environment?
As far as the individual's term that the employer may use or the worker may use, could mean something very different from the unemployment system. So essentially, in our process, individuals who are laid off due to lack of work or reduction in work, and an individual who is on a furlough, that may mean something different to the employer, but as far as the unemployment system is concerned, it's equivalent to the same thing. So an individual is no longer working due to no fault of their own. They haven't been fired or discharged or terminated. They didn't quit their job, and they're not on a leave of absence, meaning suspended or some medical leave. So furlough and lack of work or reduction in hours or reduction in force is the same thing as a lack of work. So when the individual logged into our system to file a claim or contact the contact center, they will ask them the reason for separation. And the most common term is lack of work. So individuals who may be on a furlough by their employer, it may be a technical issue, and here's what I don't know. I have to speak to that particular employer. So is that individual being paid by that employer while they're on furlough? So if they're being paid, then the question is it for remuneration of services rendered? So are they being paid a partial check or income on furlough, or does that mean that the individual employer is paying for their insurance or paying for their benefits or the fringes, and they're still job attached? So if it's not for remuneration of services or a part of their hourly rate of pay or salary, it's a lack of work.
And even though they are, in some cases, employers may still be paying their insurance, it does not disqualify them from receiving unemployment or some of the provisions in the CARES Act.
So then moving on, how do people apply? So if I figure all that out, that I can apply, I am eligible, what do I do?
We still want people to file online self-service. That is the best, easiest way for people to file. www.mdes.ms.gov. Self-service, easiest way to file. We do have our call center for situations where people cannot file online. And we also have our system of WIN Job Centers. It's 40 plus WIN Job Centers around the state, and we have put those WIN Job Center email addresses and phone numbers out on our website and social media is an alternative way to get assistance for filing your unemployment insurance claim. And we encourage people to utilize the WIN Job Center system because we are in unprecedented times and there is a backlog and there are thousands and thousands of Mississippians who need help, and we are spreading the effort around so that, and we are bringing on new additional ways to help serve in the next few days. So we do encourage people to utilize their WIN Job Center system. But I will say the WIN Job Centers are not open to the public. So we are not asking people to drive up to the WIN Job Centers. The doors are closed. They are helping people via email and through the phone system.
And we've actually shared the information with your email addresses and the PDF forms. So hopefully that's been helpful. So certainly, of course, the file it online is 24/7. People can do that anytime, day or night. And then the hours on those calls, you said, was 7 to 10?
7 to 10.
Okay.
7.
Great. And of course, I would think if you call at non-traditional work hours, it's probably a little easier to get in.
We think so, yes. The call volume is, like we said, we've never had any call volume like this. So we think that non-peak hours would still continues to be the best advice that we can give. But because it's thousands and thousands of Mississippians and hundreds of thousands across the United States,
Right.
What we normally know is the norm may not be the norm. So we still advise to do things in off-peak hours, though.
What do you need to apply? Do I need certain documentation, information? I would think Social Security numbers, things like that. What do people need to have ready when they're able to go online or they're able to get that call through?
Well, here's some basic things that would be helpful. The individual would have their full legal name as it reports on an official identification, whether it be a driver's license or state issued identification record. If you have married or changed last names in the last 18 months, to have that documentation, because the employer reports wages to our system based upon the payroll name they have for the individual. And if the individual has gotten married and they didn't change their name in the system, then that may be a flag or something to say this didn't match. So their official name on some state issued identification or official identification, their Social Security number or Social Security card, driver's license, their mailing address, a valid phone number, and employment they've worked in the last 18 months, recent 18 months. So all of that information will be very helpful to get them through the claim process online as a self-service experience.
I would add also that the documents and information that he's talking about, they need to have that information ready with them when they file online or call the call center, because there are timeout sessions specifically online. If someone is online but they have no activity for a while, it may time out. And also remembering exactly the way you input your name and setting up your username and password, exactly remembering that information is key to a seamless process.
And Timothy, you said they needed information about 18 months of employment. They need the name of the company. Do they need address, phone numbers, or do they need names of supervisors, anything like that?
Yeah, all of that would be very helpful, but the main thing is the name of their employer. And I'm sort of giggling here because we're having incidences where individuals really don't know the business name of the employer. They may know they're doing business as, but the official name would be something of a corporation that may not be on their check stub. So we've seen cases where individuals say, I didn't work for this particular business, or I didn't work for this particular employer. And as a result of that, we have to do an investigation to determine if they work for the employer. So if they have a copy of their check stubs or a pay record showing what their payroll business company name is, for instance, I'll give you an example. There is a business by the name of Dillard's retail store. But that won't show up on their wage records. So it's another name. So those are common things that individuals who are self-servicing themselves may not know what is my official company's name. But yes, the company's name, the dates they worked when they started, and their most recent last day of work, even if they're working part-time now, list the last day they worked at the point they filed their claim. And the reason for separation, more than likely, may be with a recent job, a lack of work or reduction in hours or income. And then in descending chronological order, meaning the most recent job first, and the one before that, and the one before that in the last 18 months. Currently, there are regulations in place that determine whether or not a employer who may not be the last or recent employer, whether or not their account is going to be charged for a claim filed against them. So that's why we need that information to determine if a person has met the requalification provisions of the law to qualify, and whether or not that employer's account will be charged. So the last 18 months, again, the employer's name, address, phone number. I don't think at this point it's asking for a supervisor's name, but it would be helpful to have that in case an investigation has to be conducted, so that information can be provided to an investigator. But just to file a claim, that wouldn't be required.
Would having a W-2 handy be helpful, because that probably has most of that information on it for the company?
Yes, exactly. And the same thing for 1099, but having a W-2 would be more accurate than what may be on a payroll, because there's some payroll processing entities that process payroll that may not be the employer. So you can't always rely on that pay stuff.
Yeah, most people should have those W-2s pretty handy, because certainly the tax filing for your income tax deadline has been pushed back, but we know we've all received those from those companies. So people ought to have those pretty handy. All right. So how much and when can people expect to receive their benefits? And how does those benefits, how much, when, and then how do they get that? Is that a check? Is that direct deposit?
Well, let me digress just a moment, because I've got something for those individuals who may not be U.S. citizens, that may have a visa or alien registration certificate. Then they must have that information, their that card number, visa number handy in place of a Social Security number or in addition to a Social Security number. So that's important for those individuals who may be in that category.
Good clarification.
Normally, the individual must file a waiting period or survey waiting period, which is a calendar week. Currently, that has been suspended by the executive order of Governor Reeves. So that 1 week waiting period is suspended. So that means essentially on average, within a 10 days to 12 days, 14 days, individual will receive their first compensation. Normally, it's a 1 week waiting period, which starts on a Sunday and ends midnight on Saturday. And you're always filing for the week previous. So if you take this particular week that we're in now and look past back towards yesterday, the 5th, then you are eligible to file for this week, this coming Sunday. So if you serve your waiting period, meaning you didn't work any this week, you won't work any this week, and you file your claim this week, the initial claim is different from the weekly claim. So the initial claim is basically the intake of questions that require you give all the information I mentioned before, listing the 18 months of employment if you had a different employer. Once that's processed, then the person will be able to come back in at the end of the week or the beginning of next week and file their weekly certification. If there aren't any separation issues and if there aren't any wages, it could very well be that they could get paid Monday of next week for this current week. So the waiting period has been waived. So a person could very well file on a Friday or file this coming Saturday and get paid as early as Sunday next week. So that's normally not the case, but because of the governor's executive order being suspended in the waiting period, then it could very well happen. The maximum claim is $235 a week. If there aren't any earnings or working wages that week, and the minimum claim for Mississippi is $30. So a person could be eligible between $30 and $235 a week, and still could be eligible for partial unemployment if they're working part-time as well. So we encourage everybody that can continue working to do so and report their earnings, and then the system will calculate and determine how much they'll be awarded. I'd like to say in addition to that, with the federal program, we're working frantically trying to get the programming in place so the individuals who will be entitled to an additional $600 on top of the regular benefits will be paid during the same process. So if a person qualifies for $235 and they're not working, they will get an additional $600 with that payment as soon as we get our programming in place. Now, I would divert back to the same process with the individuals who are self-employed, who may be receiving a 1099. We're pending some more guidance from the Department of Labor, and we're hoping, I want to say praying, that we'll get that information from the Department of Labor this week so we can get our programs, system program changed and start paying that money out to those who are eligible.
Now, you mentioned a term that I think is really important, people need to know, weekly certifications. Can you clarify that, make sure everybody understands what that means and how important it is?
It is very important. It is the life stream of getting paid on a weekly basis. Mississippi pays on a weekly basis. There are some other states that pay bi-weekly, but Mississippi is weekly. And each week, as early as 12:01 a.m. on Sunday morning, you can go into the system. The contact center won't be open at that time for individuals who filed for the previous week, but you can go in on your own self-service as early as Sunday morning after midnight and file your weekly certification for the previous week, which ended at midnight that Saturday. You do that every week that you're unemployed, every week that you're working part-time or have a reduction of hours of work. File your weekly certification. There are about 5 questions that you have to answer. You can use your smartphone to do that. You don't have to have a computer long as you have access to the internet, you can log into the system. And in fact, there is an app that you can, turn my phone off, but it's two-file UI. The individual can do that in the confines of their own home or privacy. Certainly don't encourage them to be texting and driving and filing at the same time, but the convenience of it is there. So you can either do that by filing on your smart device or your mobile device or landline computer or Wi-Fi computer. And if they aren't able to do that self-service, then the contact center is available. However, we strongly encourage individuals to use the online self-service service. And if they can't get through there, again, we have the WIN job centers around the state that you can access their email account or call and leave a voice message, and they'll respond as soon as possible.
And Timothy, knowing your username and password, that's a key. I mean, you can't get in to file your weekly cert unless you have that information. So putting that in a safe place where someone can access it and know exactly what their username and password will go towards making the process more seamless.
And real quickly, how does that payment come? Is that direct deposit? Is that a debit card? Is that cash, a check?
That comes by debit card. So each person who files a claim will be issued a debit card once they're eligible. It's determined that they will be eligible for benefits. They will receive a debit card within 7 to 10 business days, normally, because the vendor who serves other states, and the postal system is being challenged as well. So there may be some delays, but by debit card, that money will be loaded each week that they file the weekly certification, and they will have access to those funds 24 hours a day. If an individual elects to have their money direct deposit, they will get a debit card by default, and then they can go back into the system and change that method of payment. However, we strongly encourage debit card use versus direct deposit, but the person has a choice to do that. If they choose direct deposit, they will have to go online into the system under their username and password, which they should protect and not share with anybody, and go in and input their routing number for their bank and their checking account number, and then be required to send verification of that to an email address, which will tell them online where to send that. So they do have an option to select direct deposit.
I know y'all are busy, but if I could squeeze one or two more questions in. If somebody they're already receiving unemployment benefits prior to the virus, do they need to do anything differently?
No. If they're currently receiving benefits and they have monies left in their account or in their balance, there is nothing they need to do in addition to that. We will be sending out instructions to those individuals about their eligibility for the other programs. And if they qualify for the additional $600, then that money will be put on the debit card or direct deposit as they continue to file their weekly certifications. If there are any weeks before this programming is complete that they didn't receive the additional money for, the system will identify those individuals and may either do one or two things: either give them a single payment as a $600 standalone because they've already received their previous regular benefits, or in the next time period, they may pay them the $600 for that previous week and the current week and their regular benefits. So simply saying everybody will get paid what they're entitled to and would not have to go back into the system to notify if there's anything. The area where we will need some help from the employer community or from the community is for those individuals who don't have wage information in the system. So right now, under the pandemic unemployment assistance, which would be those individuals who have 1099s or self-employed, they will have to come back into the system at some point and provide us information, whether it be a 1099 or some proof of income for a particular time period. But for those who are currently receiving, there shouldn't be any required additional action.
And we are reminded by our Department of Labor Office of Inspector General that it is unlawful to receive unemployment or any of the extended unemployment programs under the CARES Act. So, of course, we want all Mississippians who are eligible for one of these programs to draw them. But we also want to say that if you are not eligible, don't draw, or don't give false information, because at the back end of this or through the process, there will be investigations done, and it's considered fraud and can be punishable. So we certainly don't want people that aren't eligible under the programs to try and circumvent the processes and draw, because it will be detected on the back end and recovered through any means that we have at our disposal to do so.
So something that I heard you say, and we might just need a little clarification on, is certainly there is an eligible date of when you were laid off or you're no longer employed, lack of work, as you talked about it. But people, they're not missing out if they don't apply immediately. And I get people are looking for the funds to pay their monthly bills, but people shouldn't be panicked, if I'm correct on this, that if they wait till next week because the lines are jammed or they're not getting in, the lines are jammed, they're still going to get what's owed to them going back to that date. Is that correct?
That is correct. That is correct. And when they go into the system to self-service themselves, they'll be asked to provide the last day of work. And if they need to file for the previous week, they can do that themselves. Or if they speak to somebody on the phone, they can tell the person what was their last day of work, and they will assist them with filing any previous weeks.
So timing certainly is important from a standpoint of people having the funds so that they can pay their obligations, but it doesn't mean they're going to be penalized from the Mississippi Department of Employment Security because they didn't file on the day that they were separated from that position.
That is correct.
Okay. The last question I'll ask, and I'm going to let y'all go. Certainly here on the coast, we have a lot of tipped employees, people who work in the casino industry, particularly, and then of course restaurants and bars, a lot of tipped employees. Can you talk just a little bit about how that works? Because certainly their wage or their check they receive from their employer is one amount, but then they have those tips as another amount.
That's a good question. The wages would be reported to the agency. I don't know how they would report their tips, because the question would be, what would they earn? So I would encourage them to report their earnings from the employer, and I don't know about the tips. That's a good question. So, but for sure, report their earnings. I do know that if they're reporting those earnings, those tips as earnings, and it shows up in their W-2, they do need to report it. If it's a 1099, which I doubt as a worker, then they would need to report it as a self-employed individual. So if those tips are captured and reported by the employer as a part of their W-2, they do need to report those.
And that's part of, we have several things, all states across the nation have several unique issues such as this that we are seeking clarification from Department of Labor. So I just added that to the list. If it's not already covered by another state, we'll certainly submit that question.
Yeah, sorry to add to your plate, but we might as well figure all this out sooner more than later. That's really all we wanted to ask you today. I know people have other questions, but that ought to get them at least out of the gate. Is there anything else you feel like it's important for our business members and their employees to know at this point?
Well, I think that you covered it in that be patient, even when patience is thin. There is a great group of people here that through their own worries of their safety for themselves and their families are working in call centers and working from 7 a.m. to 10 at night, 7 days a week, and on and on and on to make sure that we do our job and deliver the unemployment services to the citizens of Mississippi. You'll be publishing the different ways to access us, and we will be announcing some additional ways as the days go on. Unfortunately, for all of us across the nation, being prepared for a pandemic of this nature, I don't know if any of us could be fully prepared. All of us were in a good economy, and in those times, the staff and the money that comes to each state for unemployment insurance benefit for the system to run unemployment insurance is lower. So, but we have quickly ramped up and will continue to ramp up and meet the needs of Mississippians. So we appreciate your help with that.
Well, thank you very much. So we've been listening and talking with Ms. Jackie Turner, the Executive Director of the Mississippi Department of Employment Security, and Timothy Rush, also there with MDES, with the Director of Reemployment Assistance. Thank you so much for your service to the citizens of Mississippi, and I wish y'all a good day, and hopefully you can have a nice weekend. Enjoy that as well. I know y'all are busy, and we certainly appreciate you. This is Adele Lyons with the Mississippi Gulf Coast Chamber of Commerce. Thank you. We'll be adding some information on the back end of this so that you can follow up on some of those resources. Thank y'all very much.